Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to the Reptile Barn. Welcome to our fourth conservation chat, our Monday morning conservation chat. Today's topic is a weird one. We're going to talk about de-extinction. Okay? Is that even conservation? So, right off the bat, what is de-extinction? It is the idea of bringing back species and genetics that are extinct and making them not extinct anymore, right? Typically through cloning or, genetic modification with some of the technologies we have these days, or even like line breeding, trying to get back to a more ancestral trait, right? So to be clear, the majority, not all, but the majority of serious conservationists just roll their eyes at this and move on. To them, this is not conservation at all. So just be aware of that. We're having kind of a fringe discussion today because a lot of conservationists are like, this is a waste of time and money. It's a gimmick. We have all these species that are endangered today that aren't extinct that we should be focusing on. Why are you spending all this time and money on these species that are already gone, right? So they have a point. What would the counter argument be? Well, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here because a large part of me agrees with them, right? But I think it's a fascinating discussion. There is a company called Colossal, and I've got their homepage pulled up here. They believe that de-extinction has benefits beyond just being a curiosity. Now, I should say they claim that that's what they believe, right? Maybe that they're in it for the money. You know, it gets a lot of attention. They are focusing in on mammoths, thylacines, which is the Tasmanian tiger, and the dodo. So they get a lot of attention, right? There are a few benefits that I can see. First, attention can bring money, and conservation needs money. I wish it didn't, but it absolutely does. All of the most successful conservation projects out there are expensive. They just are. And if you can't get a government grant or a really wealthy philanthropist, it can be very difficult to get anything done. Private organizations like zoos do a lot of money spending for this sort of thing. But regardless, if you're a company like Colossal and you can say, oh, we're 2 years away from bringing back the dodo bird, and people are willing to kind of crowd source the finances for this, what ends up happening is some of these de-extinction efforts also donate substantial amounts of money to more traditional or legitimate conservation causes for environments that today still exist and are under a lot of stress, or species that are endangered today, not just extinct, right? So being able to draw in eyeballs and dollars and then direct some of those towards reforestation or cleaning up trash or helping the corals on the Great Barrier Reef or whatever, that's obviously a positive. If it's money that wasn't gonna have been donated previously, and because of this cool, interesting thing you're doing, now it is being donated and you're able to put some of that towards good causes, great, that's awesome. So definitely that could be useful, and that has happened. Some of these places have donated quite a bit of money to desperately needed causes. So what else? The claim from this particular company that I find intriguing, not that I'm convinced, but that I find intriguing, is that species that were only lost in the very near past, so they haven't been extinct for very long, like the dodo, right? Or the thylacine, played an important role in their ecosystem. And if they were to come back, they would be able to keep filling that role in the ecosystem, making that ecosystem more healthy, allowing other species that might be struggling to get a boost. It's hard to put a finger on exactly how that would work because we've never done it before, but we have done reintroductions. I'm going to do a whole episode on Yellowstone, so I don't want to get too deep into this, but some scientists attribute the increased health of the Yellowstone ecosystem to the reintroduction of wolves. Because obviously, an apex predator like a wolf has a huge effect, an outsized effect on the entire ecosystem compared to the relatively small numbers of that species, which is in this case the wolf. Now, there's other factors with Yellowstone, but we'll go over that on another week, maybe even next week. But the point is, you bring back something like a thylacine, if you have an environment that can support it, because you have to remember they went extinct for a reason, right? Maybe they were hunted to extinction. Maybe they lost all their habitat. Maybe they had a disease rage through their whole population. If you haven't fixed the problem that drove them extinct, it seems very silly to me to be trying to bring them back at all. At that point, it really is just a gimmick, right? They'd be pets. They'd be just maybe in zoos or something. But that's not de-extinction. That's not a conservation cause. If you don't have an environment suitable for them, where you have a good idea of how to fix what went wrong in the first place that drove them extinct, then you're not going to be helping anything by bringing them back. You should be putting those resources, if conservation really is your principal motivation, you should be trying to fix the environment, right? But the argument that maybe some of these keystone species could help fix that environment, maybe that has some merit, right? Certainly we've seen with certain extinctions, when an animal does go extinct, a negative effect on the entire ecosystem. Look at areas that have become locally extinct, of like beavers, for example. Dramatic changes to the watershed, to other species. I mean, it's pretty extreme. Not every species is going to be like that, but some of them are. So that's at least an argument worth discussing, right? I guess what my top concern would be is if government grants start going towards things like this, because that is money that would have gone to a more traditional conservation cause, right? So if you have a grant that could have gone towards an endangered Florida panther project, or an endangered whatever the case may be, and instead one of these companies got that grant because they're working on woolly mammoths, that's a little concerning, or a lot concerning even. In the case of woolly mammoths, I don't know of any community or government in North America, where woolly mammoths were from, that would be willing to allow there to be wild woolly mammoths again, right? A gigantic animal that would immediately have a massive impact, potentially be dangerous. I mean, it would be, I could not see a world where any government in North America, city, state, national, whatever, Canadian, American, whatever, allowing that to be released out into the wild, right? I can't imagine that that's really a possible thing. And if it's not, then what are you doing? Why? And I worry it's for the money. They're trying to build a Jurassic Park kind of idea, where people who will be so intrigued and fascinated by the opportunity to go to a zoo or some sort of preserve and see woolly mammoths or thylacines or whatever else they come up with won't be able to help themselves. They'll flock to places like that, and these people could enrich themselves a lot. Not that building a business and making money is bad, but calling it conservation, that would be dishonest and a huge distraction to real conservation. So I'm trying to approach this fairly. Obviously, you guys can probably see that I'm mostly against this, but I'm at least trying to be mentally open to what are the arguments in favor of this as I'm presenting this concept. One other concern. How do you really define de-extinction? Will those be woolly mammoths? I don't know. Because we're not talking about true cloning, where you have the exact, a twin, basically, an identical twin of some ancient woolly mammoth. And even if you did, sorry, I keep turning this camera because it keeps slipping on me. That woolly mammoth back in the day isn't only genetics, it's also a product of its environment, and that environment doesn't exist anymore. We don't have an ice age right now with hundreds and hundreds of miles of ice sheets covering a giant portion of the continent, and the climate is very different. Precipitation patterns are different. Temperatures are different. So even if you did have an exact clone where all the thousands and thousands of genes in this animal are exactly the same, which is not what they're doing, would it really still be a woolly mammoth? Would it be able to interact with the environment today like woolly mammoths did back then? I don't think so. Which is maybe an argument in favor of animals that only went extinct very, very recently as opposed to thousands of years ago, right? Because on a geological scale, thousands of years ago is very recently. But on a biome discussion, like what is the environment of this location, it changed a lot in the last 5 to 10,000 years. At least some places did. Maybe not as much in the tropics, but northern North America certainly did, right? So if they're talking about just going in and taking maybe an Asian elephant and starting to alter genes to make the more mammoth dome-shaped head and smaller ears and a hairier coat and whatever other thing, the shape of the tusks, if they're just going into CRISPR and altering the genes of an elephant so it looks like a mammoth, is that really de-extinction? I don't see how you could call that de-extinction. A mammoth is still extinct. You can now have this other animal that has been altered to look very much like it. But I just don't see that as conservation at all. Maybe, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I am wrong. If you're just trying to say we're going to create an animal that's going to have a similar effect on the environment that those ancient animals did so that we can improve the environment in whatever way we're claiming those animals did, okay, but that's not de-extinction, right? And even then, that's a very dubious and difficult case to make. So anyway, I don't mean to be a downer. I'm not trying to say I'm in charge of how these people spend their money. These people can spend their money however they want. My only concern is that conservation is tied to not just species that are going extinct and that are in danger and need our help, but the reasons why they're going extinct. We're fragmenting their habitat. We are building dams in their rivers. We're doing all sorts of things. The ocean is becoming more acidic. Like I was talking about before, the precipitation patterns are changing. Some places are getting a lot drier very quickly. We're having desertification happening. And if we could zone in on those broader problems for an entire ecosystem and fix them, or at least stop wrecking them, then we would be helping thousands of species with that one effort. So pouring tens or hundreds of millions of dollars into bringing back a sort of woolly mammoth, that's not going to have a large conservation impact, in my opinion. Um, something like a thylacine, maybe we could have another discussion. There's photographs of thylacines. They just went extinct. And they're a predator, a mid-sized predator. So maybe there are environmental impacts that are very, very positive that they could have if they were reintroduced. I don't know. Maybe we have museum specimens that are so well preserved that we could still extract perfect DNA and make a real clone so that it's a true thylacine. Maybe that's a separate discussion. But for the most part, when people talk about de-extinction, a lot of people immediately jump to a Jurassic Park type of idea. Obviously, that can't happen, right? But even for these more recently extinct species, I just see a whole lot of obstacles and problems, ethical questions. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a downer. I want you guys to let me know what you think. This is a broad topic. I kind of talked about this one company, couple of species, but efforts related to this are all over the place. So maybe some of them are more positive, or I say positive, what I would think of as positive than these ones that I highlighted. Let me know if you think there's some like that. I'm curious to see what you guys think. And thanks so much for watching. Until next time, we're the Reptile Barn.